Hey everyone, it's John Heath here again for Milton Rose Learning with another Let's Learn video on Storm on the Island by the poet Seamus Heaney, a Nobel Prize winner. So we're going to look today then at the key context and Ireland and some of the troubles that the nation had. Then we will break down, we'll do a little poetry reading, and we'll just get a feel for the phonology of this kind of wonderful poem. And then we'll round off by giving you some of the best annotations to start off your kind of annotating in your anthologies. Okay then, right, well I can see he's waiting for us, so let's dive in. So first off then, key context, okay. So you can see the beautiful Irish countryside there, absolutely majestic, and you can see Seamus Heaney staring at us. Okay, right, so first off then, context. So this is a poem very much about rural life and the power of nature. So the poem captures the experience of living in a remote coastal community, Ireland, where the natural elements are both beautiful and threatening. Okay, so nature it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Nature is very beautiful, but it's also extremely threatening at the same time. And I think that kind of captures it very well. And you can see rural life there in the image. That's the kind of vibe we're talking about in this poem. Okay, just so if anyone's a visual learner and you can just visualize that for a second. Okay then, alright, second bit of context you should all know about this poem is Irish history and conflict. So this was written during what we call the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and that was basically a period of time in the 20th century when Catholics and Protestants, they really didn't get along. There was killings, there was violence and things like that in parts of Northern Ireland and Belfast especially. And they're called the Troubles. You can obviously Google them in more depth. The poem can be read then as a metaphor for political tension and violence. Hence the title, Storm on the Island, is a literal storm, but also a political storm between the Protestant and Catholic forces, some of whom wanted Irish independence from the UK. So effectively, you want to interpret it metaphorically as well as literal, and I think by understanding it as a metaphor for the struggles in Ireland, or the troubles in Ireland, you're able to do that. Then modernist influences, very technical. So modernism was an artistic movement, in the 20th century. Heaney kind of is influenced up to a point, and so the modernist influences, you could say, are vivid imagery. Very vivid imagery used, and a conversational tone, a kind of mixed and blended together, which don't normally go together, to explore themes of survival and human vulnerability against uncontrollable forces. Okay, so those kind of modernist influences are very much for the high grades and the top setters, but anyone can access them really. And what you'd be doing is kind of just tracing some of the modernist kind of influences in the poem. Okay, so that gives us a bit of an inside track on the key context. So we're slightly better armed now to do a little bit of a poetry reading. You can see Storm on the Island there, very kind of visual, isn't it? Look at that sea spray as well, and look at the tiny little cottage which is struggling to survive almost. Okay, so it's quite a short poem, one large stanza, so let's have a little read of this together. We are prepared, we build our houses squat, sink walls in rock and roof them with good slate. This wizened earth has never troubled us with hay, so as you see there are no stacks or stooks that can be lost, nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. You know what I mean. Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale. So he's talking very much about the weather, isn't he? And it's like very dangerous. So that you listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too. But there are no trees, no natural shelter, just like in the image. You might think that the sea is company, exploding comfortably down on the cliffs. But no, when it begins, the flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat. Very good, very nice simile there. Turns savage, We just sit tight whilst the wind dives and strafes invisibly. Space is a salvo. We're bombarded by the empty air, so the wind is really whipping up now in the storm. Strange, it is a huge nothing that we fear. Okay, so obviously describing the pathetic fallacy is used very heavily here throughout the whole piece, really. And it, like we say, it kind of is describing a big storm that's breaking over the Irish coast. However, as we know now, because this is a metaphor for the Troubles, it kind of represents all of the political kind of issues which Northern Ireland was having when Heaney was writing. Okay. Now, in terms of annotations, now these are not exhaustive, but they provide a good jumping off point for your annotations in your anthology. So first off, the opening line, we are prepared, we build our houses squat. And you can see one of those little squat houses there, can't you? Quite cute, a bit like Lord of the Rings style. So it starts with a colloquial tone. The colloquial means kind of conversational and a little bit kind of slangy, and it's a declarative statement. You know, this is what we do. It creates a sense of confidence and control over the environment, almost like our houses are tough and you know, they will be okay for any storm potentially. But it's foreshadowing and it's irony, because they say prepared, so that suggests you need to be prepared for something. So there's a need for security and safety, and the storm will challenge human power. Okay, they will struggle not to survive, but they will struggle to kind of come through this unscathed. Okay, just like the Troubles, Ireland was unlikely to come through those unscathed. Okay, then we have a wonderful image there as well of the storm. Description of the storm. Spits like a tame cat turned savage. Okay, so the simile there, a lovely simile. The familiar, the tame cat, becomes dangerous. Nature turns on us and becomes unpredictable, just like the cat. Okay, and you can get that in the UK generally, where the weather just changes. There was a famous American writer, Mark Twain, and he said, if you ever don't like the weather in the UK, and I would count Ireland just about as part of the UK, I suppose, for the purpose of this, he said, if you don't like the weather in the UK, just wait 10 minutes. Because it changes all the time. So like that tame cat turning savage, it's unpredictable. It's also personification, so it highlights the threat of the storm and tension between humans and nature. Okay, so it represents that kind of constant conflict between the two forces. Okay, then number 3, back to the kind of little cottage, which is under threat now from the storm. There's a big use of auditory imagery, so sound imagery, because imagery is not just to do with the eyes. Imagery can be to do with any of the senses, such as hearing and sound. Strange, it is a huge nothing that we fear. So it's a paradox or oxymoron. It emphasizes the fear of an invisible, uncontrollable force, almost like God is kind of sending this storm to kind of damage them. An auditory imagery and psychological impact. The unseen storm dominates the imagination and creates anxiety. Almost like, if we interpret it metaphorically for the Troubles, a lot of these poor people in Northern Ireland would just be like anxious constantly, because you're waiting for the next political kind of conflict and riot to break out. Then we have finally the ending line. Actually not the ending line, but kind of towards the end, a line that I like. Exploding comfortably down on the cliffs. I quite like that for the sea spray. Exploding comfortably, well, you can't have a comfortable explosion unless there's something I don't know. That contrasts violence with calm, and it shows nature's duality. Nature's extremely beautiful, but it can be extremely violent at the same time. And metaphorically, I think that's showing the Troubles. Things could be fine for months, and then bang, there was a religious conflict or a political conflict between the two forces. So it shows, that duality. Also, the personification / metaphor, storm is described almost as human, and it reinforces again the tension between human and natural elemental forces, which is as old as the hills, and it will be there forever and ever. Amen. Okay. So hopefully that's provided you just with a little starter pack almost on Storm on the Island. It's just kind of giving you that little push into the poem. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss another Let's Learn video again, of course. And feel free, if you have any comments and stuff, just pop those on YouTube and we'll always do our best to reply. It just remains to say, with this kind of masterpiece, Storm on the Island, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.